Hello and welcome to the Come Alive podcast. I'm your host, Mehermir Chandani. I'm a mother with a story, a business leader with a vision, and a leadership coach with a mission to transform lives and businesses. I am dedicated to empowering 10x growth in fellow humans by unlocking the transformative power of self-connection. I'm happy to announce a unique collaboration with YPO MENA and Regional called Every Journey Has a Story to Tell. It's a 24-episode podcast series of inspiring YPO members. If you'd like to be on the show, please do reach out to me and I'd love to host you. So I'm super excited to have Yunib Siddiqui with me on the show today. He is the group CEO and owner of Jones the Grocer, a global leader in casual dining industry with 37 locations across Middle East, Asia, and Europe. His journey began in London with a successful business in luxury accessories, later expanding into fashion and hospitality. Known for his strategic acumen, Yunib acquired Jones the Grocer's global IP in 2019, revitalizing the brand and spearheading its international growth. So beyond business, he is a passionate advocate for entrepreneurship, an active YPO member, a creative writer, and a father of 3 sons. So I'm super excited to have Yunib Siddiqui on my show today. Thank you, Yunib, for being with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit about Jones the Grocer. You are the owner and you acquired the IP rights in 2019.
Yes.
So what are your plans and what made you acquire it?
So, it's quite a long, convoluted story, but I came here in 2000, and here being the UAE in 2007-8. I'd actually sort of exited my previous business, and I was looking to do something different. Always enjoyed cooking, food, all that kind of stuff. And I guess I was naive in a sense to really have this idea that I could run a restaurant or restaurant-related business in retrospect. And so I started looking. I looked at Carluccio's, but I think they already had committed to Landmark. This was in 2007. And originally the idea was to do it in London. That was the plan. And I looked at lots of F&B businesses. I didn't want to do it from scratch myself because I didn't know that much about it. So I thought, let me look at some franchise alternatives where I'd be able to learn the know-how and have some support. And so I went down this route and I stumbled across Jones the Grocer in a magazine called Wallpaper. Wallpaper's interiors, fashion, started off by a guy called Tyler Brûlé. It's now owned by Condé Nast, but it was a fantastic publication which had a center spread on Jones the Grocer. This was 2007, opening in Singapore. So I saw this center spread. I was lying in bed in London after dropping the kids to football, and I said to my wife, "This is fantastic. I really want to do this." The whole idea of having a grocery with a dine-in element, open kitchens, all that stuff, beautiful interior. So she sort of said sure. So I actually flew out to meet the owner. I sent him a fax. He said, "Come and see me in Singapore." And so I met the owner at the time in Singapore, and I kind of signed a deal for London. Literally, just got there. And then on the way back, I flew via Dubai. And a bunch of my LSE friends, or London School of Economics, where I went to university, friends who worked for Abraj Capital, funnily enough, and some of them were invested with Abraj, said to me, no, forget about England, Big Bang. And, it was just before the Big Bang. So they were kind of saying it's dying and, don't worry about doing anything there. UAE is the place to do it. So I kind of, listen to this conversation, and I'm kind of taken by the idea. They said, do it in DIFC, you're going to clean up there, there's nothing like it. et cetera, et cetera. So I went back and told my wife this, and she said, forget it. I'm not leaving London. Bad idea. And the kids were young. My youngest, I think, must have been 7 or 8. I can't remember. The oldest would have been, I guess, 10 or 11. And so it sort of went through this, through this process where I did the business plan, really tried to justify not doing it in London, so that my wife would actually take it on. And then went about trying to raise money. And I actually, the guys who, from Dubai, the Abraj guys, said they'd put capital in.
Oh, wow.
Into the business. And I was going to put some in. And we had enough to get the first store off the ground. And then we were expecting to raise some more after that. I'm answering a question in a very roundabout way.
No, that's good. I mean, it's amazing.
And so of course, when I arrived in Dubai, I started to sort of look at all the rents. And first of all, nobody would talk to me because I was not Al Shaya or, some big family with a big portfolio. So whenever I'd go in, I'd get the worst sites in the malls. And they'd offer me crazy rents, $350 a square foot, which is what's going on now,
Wow.
today's rent. And it didn't make any sense to the business plan. And I'd already convinced my wife kind of that this was the place to do it. So I really wanted to make it work. So by coincidence, I was invited to come up to Abu Dhabi. And of course, my parents lived in Abu Dhabi at the time. And my father worked for ADNOC. So, and so I drove to Abu Dhabi to meet with a girl from Aldar, a leasing girl, who showed me the first site, which was the Al Mamura site below the Mubadala HQ. And it was very interesting because everybody had looked at this site. Al Shaya, all the big guys, Azadir, they'd all looked at this site. Boots had looked at it, turned it down, and a bunch of sites, a bunch of operators. And I looked at the site and I thought, it's a fantastic site. Why are people turning it down? And what I did do is I bought a ticker, these things that you count people with.
Yes.
And I went into the car park at Mubadala. In the building I was going into, and the other one, and actually counted the number of Porsches and BMWs going into this car park, and there was nothing else but that, that level of car. And I did a whole chart saying, on a daily basis there were like 500, high luxury cars going in. Then I went to Umair Travel, which was a travel agency. I don't know if you know it, but in Mubadala it was a captive travel agency, and I asked one of the guys there, how many business class tickets do you issue? He said probably about 70%. So I said, the remaining is what, economy? He says, no, first class.
Wow.
And then I started talking to people, and people said that it's going to be the executive council office upstairs. It's going to be where Mubadala's HQ is going to be based. All the sort of higher level ministries are moving into this building. So I went back to the landlord, who actually was at the time, the CEO was Muhammad Mubarak. And I met with him, and he just said to me, listen, you have to go into this building, and this is, the most marquee building. And they were actually willing to even give me a fit-out contribution, which was unheard of. None of the guys in Dubai, like Imar, were not giving me a cent, not even looking at me for that matter. And so I went down, met the girl from Aldar. I met a guy called Fred Douglas, who was head of leasing, happened to be Australian. So he kind of knew the brand from Australia. And I signed the lease. I actually went down about a few days later. I signed the lease, paid the deposit. And as soon as I got back to Dubai, the three Abraj guys said, Abu Dhabi is not sexy enough. Who goes to Abu Dhabi? It's like a small little village. There's no business there. We haven't even been there ourselves, some of them said.
God.
So and then we went through this, you might say a tussle, where what they were saying was they wanted to pull out because this was not what they intended, visioned. And I said, listen, this is going to be successful. And they said, no. Of course, I'd done the business plan and I'd done a return figure, and I said, this is the IRR and so on. And they said, listen, we get better IRR in barrage friends and family. We're putting money in there, we're getting better return, better investment, and we're going to pull out. So all three of them pulled out.
Oh my God.
So I was left holding the hat. I went around, to the usual people that I knew in Dubai, a whole bunch of people, asking if they would fund it. Everybody said no. In the end, a friend of mine from college, based in London, who was coming in as a shareholder, he was intending to, but hadn't yet, stepped in. He came in as a shareholder, and he put in a little bit of capital in as debt. So that's how we ended up. So that's how I kind of ended up.
What a beautiful journey.
Doing the first store.
And how did it do?
I mean, it was fantastic. I mean, from day one, we had queues out the door. I had people coming from Dubai to have a look at it. In fact, Mubadala was such a magnet for bankers because it was just launched, it was in early days for the fund. So there was a lot of people from Dubai coming through, and of course, a lot of people from DIFC coming through. So there was suddenly this awareness in Dubai. There was this concept in Abu Dhabi that was better than anything in Dubai.
Wow.
And I was getting calls from landlords now. And you won't believe this. I sent the head of leasing at Emaar, Sally Yaqub, a cab from Abu Dhabi to pick her up because she'd confirmed she was coming to the opening.
Okay.
She never came.
Oh.
The cab waited. She never took my calls, never showed up.
Okay.
And now they're all calling me saying, oh, we've got a site. So anyway, so that's kind of what happened. And of course, I was so scarred by this experience. I didn't want to go into any malls. So all our first sites, 5 sites, were outside malls, standalone. So the first one was standalone. In Abu Dhabi, we have Raha Gardens, which is kind of a mini community mall. And then in Manara was standalone.
Yeah. I mean, I got to know about it from Manara because
Exactly.
it was such a great location and it's so easily accessible for meetings and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And so that's kind of what happened. And of course, I felt it was the right strategy at the time because we wanted to create a destination. I didn't want to be in a mall, got lost amongst all the other brands. And of course, the malls at that time, at least in my opinion, were perceived as being more touristy. And I didn't feel that was my market. My market was residents living in Dubai who I wanted to attract. So for right or wrong, I ended up growing the brand through the sort of standalone location route. And of course, the first store did very well. We had everybody going in. We had His Highness came in almost every other day, or once a week. We had, and he brought him and Khaldoon and all the people that were there upstairs brought in everybody who's anybody, as guests. So we had Hillary Clinton. We had, you name it. We had them come in, and I was pretty grateful for the patronage. And he, in a sense, he kind of helped us put our brand on the map in a way, because we were in all the newspapers. We had a cabinet meeting there once in store, which was in in all the newspapers. So it was fantastic. It was really good.
So what's meant to be is meant to be, I feel.
Yeah, and so it was good. And he still comes. His Highness still comes in. He was there last week. A couple of weeks ago. It's been a great journey, and now answering a question on acquiring the IP, we sort of got in the first 3 years when we rolled out the 5 stores or 6 stores, whatever it was, 6 stores
Between Abu Dhabi and Dubai.
Yeah, mostly Abu Dhabi.
Oh, okay.
Dubai was only Manara.
Okay.
Yeah, mostly Abu Dhabi. So we had 5 in Abu Dhabi and one in Dubai. And we still have a similar number of stores in Abu Dhabi, a couple more since then. We ended up getting relatively bigger than our franchisor very quickly. So what happened was that we put a lot of pressure on his resources, whether it was menu development, product sourcing, getting goods on time, supplies on time, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know exactly how his business worked, but it felt like we were struggling to get what we wanted. And there was a lot of delay, a lot of time lost in. I mean, we didn't have a menu change, for example, for almost 3 years when we first opened. Of course, we hired a really good team. We had people like Tom from Tom and Serge. Serge worked for us. Josh worked for us, who I think has, anyway, a bunch of other concepts. So all of these guys came. We were the sort of, you might say, the sort of testing ground, you might say, for all the F&B people. They all came into my business. They joined us at a very young age. For example, I brought in Tom when he must have been 21 or something. Oh. And he worked for me for almost 5 years. But we developed a lot of the menu together. And of course, the franchisor could see that we were doing this, but he couldn't give us the menus. He just didn't have the resources. Or if he did, they weren't consultative. We didn't get the right menu item, the right development didn't come through. So we then approached the franchisor and asked him, I think it was 2012.
So how many stores did he manage at that time, and how many
I think he would have had 6 or 7.
Okay. And you'd already passed 6
I was
and
close
7
to, I was the
years.
same,
Yeah.
probably. Yeah, same. And so I approached him and said, look, let's come to an arrangement where, we'll do an acquisition of some sort, where we buy into you. You can have a seat on the board, but we'd like operating control. So we want to make sure that the business runs efficiently, because it's not running that way. And of course, he was terribly upset. He excuse my French, but he thought the bastard child couldn't possibly come along and try and buy the business. For him, it was a terrible insult.
Really? And now we look at it that if somebody wants to buy the business as an opportunity, right?
Terrible
Things have changed,
insult.
yeah.
So he did everything in his power to stop that. And he then himself went to private equity, tried to sell to private equity. He used our business as the sort of trophy asset in his portfolio. And went out, even went to Mubadala actually to try and sell it to their hospitality division in those days, who then told me that this is what was going on. And then he sold the business to 60% of it to, I believe, to El Catterton, which is El Capital, Louis Vuitton's private equity division, seeded by Bernard Arnault. So it was an 800 million euro fund, and he got in at the tail end. Because the Singapore store was very successful, and a lot of the senior staff, or some of the senior staff in the fund, went there very often at weekends for breakfast and stuff. So they liked the concept. They felt it fitted in to their sort of vision of luxury lifestyle. And it was the same fund that had Charles & Keith, C'est La Vie, and a whole bunch of other brands. Batil, I think, was in there as well, PVR Cinemas in India. So they added this to their portfolio at the tail end of the fund, when the fund was about to end. And so as soon as he got this acquisition, he went down the route of litigating against us. Because he now had a huge
oh my God.
kitty to litigate, and of course he'd put all franchise rights as minority rights in the shareholder agreement. So what that basically means is that the majority owner cannot talk to the franchisees without going through the minority owner. So any questions associated with us had to go through the minority owner. And anything that came to us directly from the majority could in effect be a breach of the shareholder agreement.
But this was all before. This
was at point after acquisition.
Okay.
After they invested.
So again, you had to do the agreements and stuff like that.
No. We were just the franchisee, right?
Okay.
So we had no connection to the ownership.
Okay.
The ownership was just changing above us, like in the sky, in the clouds.
Okay, got it.
Okay, and so they asked him a lot of questions about us, and he answered them the way he chose to answer them. Whatever he told them, we don't know, but they believed whatever. Obviously, why wouldn't you? You just got into bed with somebody, you just got married, and so you would believe that your partner,
Absolutely,
the truth in the
yes.
partner. And so he told them whatever these guys are belligerent. I don't know whatever he told them. So he started a whole litigation process with us, and we ended up, trying to fight this off. And long story short. Because this could go on forever. I could be talking about this for a long time. This was a
It's just so
This is a
interesting,
4-year
though.
journey. This is a 4-year journey.
Oh, wow.
So over the 4 years, they realized that they had potentially made I wouldn't say mistake. They realized things were not right. That he was litigating against what was the best trophy asset in the portfolio, rather than work with us, which was the mandate. And the mandate was to actually acquire us and let us run the Middle East. So he had to pay us a fair value. And what he did do, which we now understood in retrospect, is that he acquired Singapore by doing the same process. He acquired the franchisee by literally attrition. He litigated against them as well, by trying to show that they're in breach or whatever. And he acquired them for a very, very low price. And I think the strategy was the same for us.
Yeah.
And so this went on for a couple of years. In the end, I think they realized that this wasn't right. They went back to him and they realized that the relationship between them wasn't working. This is all in the public domain. They took the businesses into voluntary administration. Of course, none of this affected us. I'm talking about the top co. They got rid of him. They approached us and said, listen, we're going to work together. We then acquired 50% in their holding company. And in the end, we acquired 100%. So that happened in 2019. So it was a two-stage transaction. We acquired some things in 2000 50% of the business in 2018, I think, and the rest in 19, just before COVID. So our timing was just impeccable. But we were lucky in a sense because we only acquired the IP. We didn't acquire any of the trading assets. So luckily we didn't inherit the Australian business and the Singapore business because those went through a significant lockdown. Stores were closed, or not performing for at least 2.5 years. And I know we would not be able to carry those stores on our P&L. So actually we luckily didn't. We just acquired the intellectual property. So we then started to grow the business. So we acquired the business when we had, I think, 14 stores. And today we're sitting at 37. So predominantly through the franchise route.
Wow, what a journey. And you didn't give up.
I didn't get. We almost did. At
4 years.
At one point, we decided that we would debrand the business and call it something else.
Yeah.
And we went through this process trying to tell the El Capital guys, look, you guys are litigating. You've really made our life miserable.
Because you tend to feel that why do you need this in your life?
And there's uncertainty for us because they might lose the battle, and then we end up with this guy, again on our backs. So we did that, but they were very reassuring, and they said, look, we'll get there eventually. Just hang in there. Okay. So we kind of...
So their culture was right.
Yes.
They had the right mindset and the culture of partnership. And that's how I guess they are so big.
Yeah. And so we ended up waiting for them. And in the end, it came good for us at least, yeah.
Oh, that's such a wonderful and challenging journey. And
Yeah. So that's kind of how I ended up answering your question in a very long, roundabout way.
No, but that gives so much insight to any success that you see from the outside is always filled with challenges.
Yeah.
And you have to strive, you have to be consistent, you have to persist in any environment if you really believe in it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I got out of this whole beautiful story.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got to have, to a degree, you've got to have some sort of, I wouldn't say tunnel vision, but a very focused vision on where you want to get to.
Yeah. And so from 2019 to 2024, 37 locations.
Yes.
That's mind-blowing.
That's in total, not 37 incremental, but yes, 37 in total. And so our company-owned business is sitting today at, I think, 11 locations.
Okay.
And the remaining 18, whatever it is. I'm not doing the maths right in my head. But whatever, the remaining ones are franchised.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's also a huge growth for the...
Yeah, and we have a nice pipeline as well. We have at least 4 to 5 stores, I think, opening in the next 6 months. Yeah.
And which location are they
in? We've got 2 opening at Riyadh at the airport, which is in the new Riyadh Air terminal. We've got 1 location opening in Business Bay, in Dubai, which is a brand called Jones Social, which is a sort of a new brand we set up. And then we got a couple of smaller locations opening in Abu Dhabi in commercial properties. And then we got 1 large one opening in Barsha Heights, just near Dubai Science Park, which should actually open in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
So all this in UAE?
These are in the UAE, 2 in Riyadh.
Yeah.
And then we've just signed a Mumbai airport as well.
Wow, okay.
So we're opening at Mumbai airport, subject to planning and all of that stuff, probably Q1 next year.
Beautiful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So in your early 20s, you were into the luxury accessories business, and you were an entrepreneur. So you've always been an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, when I left university, I worked as an accountant, chartered training, article clerk, for about 2.5 years, and then I left that and went into a business at the age of 23, I think. So yeah, I've been in. If you discount the first 2.5 years, yes, I've pretty much been in business all the way through. Yeah.
So what were the lessons that you learned early in your business that were able to help you?
So I get asked this question a lot. I think a lot of it is to do with instinct. And I know this sounds crazy because people expect me to say, do a business plan and do a lot of market research and all this kind of stuff. But all of those things are important, and they remain important. It's important to sit down and really understand the market, try and understand that the idea isn't crazy. But everything starts with a crazy idea.
Mm.
And the minute you start discounting the craziness and start thinking rationally, you lose that edge. And I think most business ideas start with a spark that feels a bit nutty and stupid. And I think one has to be open to these ideas and these sparks. Once you've settled on something or 2 things or 3 things, then the right thing to do is to plan and think about its feasibility. So all these other things come in at the next level. So I think the secret or whatever is to remain open to new thought, new ideas, not be closed, have an open mind, and think not what you can't do, but what you can do. What are the limits of possible? Yeah, what is possible?
Always a great learning and a great reminder.
Beyond the limits of the possible.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think with this mindset, then you feel everything is possible. Otherwise, if you don't have an open mindset, like you said, then you feel restricted, limited.
Yeah, I mean, I would have never thought that I would have left England because I mean, I wasn't. I liked coming to the UAE because my parents were here, my dad was working here, but I never imagined living here.
And is your wife happy now?
Oh yeah, she loves it now. But I mean, we struggled for the first year or so. It was tough because the boys were very settled in their school in England, and they had their activities, they had their hobbies, they had everything was all settled.
Mm.
So moving here was a disruptor, but I think it worked out well. It has worked out well. Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah, because I think in totality, even if like they say that if the business is successful, the family also needs to be happy at the end of the day.
Yeah, and they were. I mean, funnily enough, we tried really hard to get schooling in Abu Dhabi in those days, and the only school we wanted them to get into didn't have any space.
Okay.
So
we
ended up living in Dubai, but otherwise we would have ended up living in Abu Dhabi. So I think everything works out well. I mean, sometimes I think maybe I should have lived in Abu Dhabi, considering we have more stores there. I knew a lot of people there, had a really good network there. But anyway, I'm happy that I ended up in Dubai. But I always think, had the schooling been available, I would have been living in Abu Dhabi. Yeah.
So you spoke about your instinct,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you need to do things that feel right to you and your
Mm-hmm.
instinct. Does that have relationship with you being a yogi? Like you?
No.
Like
I mean,
wellness
the yoga part came much later in life. I mean, I started doing yoga probably 9-10 years ago. Partly because I was a very, I was a very good. I won't say good. Good sounds like I'm bragging, but I was a decent squash player.
Okay.
And I injured my back, and not injured, but I just struggled with my back through playing the game, and so after lots of physio and stuff, somebody suggested doing yoga. So I actually that's how I stumbled upon yoga. I got a teacher, and he came home, and it was convenient, and he disappeared during COVID, and I continued, on my own. but I had him for almost 6 years. So that's how the yoga came about. The instinct part, I mean, arguably came from the fact that I was sent to school, when I was so young, 14 years old, 13, to England. And I think being in a boarding school in the early 80s, 1982, in an environment where, potentially you're one of 5 or 6 colored kids, So you really got to live by instinct. And I think that probably was the best thing that happened to me. And I think it's the best thing, even though my mother probably regrets it today because she feels that she sent me away too young. I think that was probably the best thing that happened to me, going to school.
For your journey, it was
for my journey, because I think it really helped me stand on my own, be independent. My parents weren't terribly wealthy, so I had this.
And where did you come from?
I was born in Karachi.
Okay.
Born in Karachi.
And they sent you to London, and so your parents.
No, so then to Abu Dhabi, where my father worked for ADNOC.
Okay. So
and from ADNOC, in those days, ADNOC gave an option because there were hardly any schools there, to send two maximum of 2 kids, I believe, to overseas schooling. So it was part of my father's package.
Okay.
So he chose to send me, but not my sister. So my sister's a bit upset about that. She carries that chip on her shoulder, but and I don't blame her. But I ended up going at that age, and it's not like my father gave me a big allowance because he wasn't that wealthy. So I ended up doing all kinds of things. Even at university, I drove a cab for almost 2.5, 3 years, but not because I needed the money, and I actually enjoyed doing it. I worked at the university halls, the residents, answering the phones. I took a lot of part-time jobs. So, I think sending me there was the reason for being so open and, feeling and understanding my instincts.
So you're a father of 3 boys as well.
Yeah.
So how does your journey of this, I would say, maybe not struggle, but this kind of standing up for yourself and making sure you're comfortable where you are and having the mindset of openness, how is that, how does that come into your parenting? Because when we experience things in life, we become a certain way. Like how is it contributing or not contributing to your parenting? Because it's very interesting what you said about your life.
So first of all, I'm a liberal through and through, and I think once again that's come through schooling and the way things were. So that informs a lot of my thinking. I tend to view every situation independently. So, for example, my middle son is an opera singer, and he sings opera professionally. So he's currently auditioning for English National Opera, Stuttgart, etc. And he went through a whole journey in music, all the way through his life. And not for a second in my head did I think that he should be doing something else, which tends to be the case with a lot of Asian parents.
Yes, exactly.
People from our backgrounds. It never occurred to me.
We have expectations of them.
Yeah.
And then so, we want them to be on those expectations rather than be free to choose your own path.
Yeah.
But this is something so beautiful that you said that not once did you say
not
anything
once.
to him.
The only thing we did say is that he should, if he does want to pursue the career, he should do a degree in music.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was it. Because it didn't make sense to not do that. You should at least finish, which is what he did. He went to Manchester and got a first in music, and then he's got a scholarship to Royal Academy. So he's done extremely well. But it's not the chosen career path. It's not a path that most people would expect.
And accept, I feel.
And accept, yeah. And then, of course, with the other two, the same thing. We were very, we encouraged them. My youngest son wanted to be a doctor. But in the end, he chose not to go down that route. He did biomed. And my oldest son did finance at Warwick, and he's a manager at BDO in London in tax. So they've all gone on their different journeys, all very different. I think they all have their own thoughts, their own processes, and they stand independently from us, I think, in a sense. My oldest, for example, has bought his own place and he's moved out and he lives on his own, got his mortgage, all of that stuff. So,
But that's very liberal from someone coming from Karachi or even India.
mm-hmm.
Like we come from, like, we always have expectations on our children, feeling that they will take care of the business, even if they do.
So that was never on the cards because I don't come from a business family.
So you always thought that everybody should
and also
do what they
I have
want to do.
examples. I have examples of people that I know whose kids always worked in the family business, sort of my age.
Mm-hmm.
And the family business had to close or got sold off or didn't work. And these people in their 50s actually don't know what to do with themselves because they don't have another skill. Because they left school literally and joined the family business,
that's a
or
great perspective.
they went to a university, didn't work outside, professionally, just joined the family business right away. The family business didn't succeed after some time, or they sold it or whatever. And these 50-year-olds just, seemed rudderless. So in my head, I always.
So were you conscious of that though, as a parent?
Always,
that
always.
If they want to, maybe you will accept.
No,
but if
I
they
didn't.
don't
I didn't even encourage it because
Okay.
for example, there was a conversation at one point where my youngest son was interested in coming, and I told him, joining the business, and I said to him, no, you've got to work till at least the age of 35, outside somewhere. At that point, if I'm able to accommodate you, I'll definitely look at it. But right now, you have to build a career, so that way you've got something to fall back on. I mean, that you could argue is a bit traditional in thinking, but I genuinely believe they have to make their own way in the world. Yeah.
That's in a way, I say also something that your parents did, like kind of go ahead, build your own life, build your own. So
Yeah.
it did help you to become the parent you wanted to, kind of to give them the freedom to be able to be who they want to be, and also be independent, because independence has its own charm, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think what's been great for me is to see them become these sort of independent, humans who have a little bit of me, a little bit of my wife, but actually they have a lot more of something else, which is exciting. That is not something that they've inherited from me. It's something completely different, which they've learned from the world. Yeah.
That's amazing. So how did you balance it all, like in between growing Jones the Grocer, a family, 3 sons? How did, like, I love to ask this question because everybody has a very different answer to it.
So you should ask my wife that question. I think my life was not so balanced in the early days.
Okay.
I used to drive into Abu Dhabi. I opened the store and I ran the store. I ran the food to Sheikh Mohammed's table. So every time he was in store, I was the guy picking the food up from the pass and delivering it. Not all the time, but I was there. I was like the manager, you might say, of the first location. And I was there almost every day. I opened the store and I closed the store. I paid the salaries. I actually had the cash out from the bank and paid each one their salaries in cash. Paid suppliers on particular days. So I did everything myself. So actually I came home, but I was constantly working. So, but that work-life balance eventually came. But for the first 5-6 years, definitely was not there. I did work a lot. Yeah.
I guess to build something, then you have to sacrifice something.
Yeah, although I am quite intense. As I said to you earlier, when I take on an idea, a spark comes, I sort of take it all on, full on, and it doesn't leave my head. So that's kind of what happened in the first 5-6 years.
Do you regret this?
A lot of people ask me this question. I think if I look back on it, if I knew how difficult running a food business is, in retrospect, and everything's easy in retrospect, I probably would have thought twice, because food is a tough business.
Yeah.
A
lot of failures.
Day in, day out. You're making stuff. You need consistency. You've got people complaining. You've got 24/7. You're on call. You open at 8 in the morning. You close at 11 at night. It is a very, very tough business operation, and you're actually, it's like a factory. But not only are you producing in the factory, the product is consumed there and then. If you're a distributor or a maker of plastic bottles, you make the bottle and you send it to a customer and you forget about it.
Yeah.
Right? Generally speaking, it survives, the water goes in, nothing goes wrong, right? But in food, you have
to deal with those
from
situations
the grain
then.
of rice to when the person consumes it, you're responsible.
Yeah.
And that responsibility is quite immense. And so had I known and really understood that responsibility, had I done this? I sometimes ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's the bit you feel that you're not sure if you would be there, but you were there and then you made it successful. You made it work.
But I do think that had I really understood the complexity of the business and its responsibilities and how tough and how competitive it is as well, I would have had second thoughts, I think.
You would choose.
But in retrospect, a lot of things are, better thought than done. Yeah.
True. Thank you for sharing. It was really, really nice. And I'm happy that you're so authentic. And the way you said it, you didn't have balance in the start.
Yeah, but now I do.
Yes.
I mean, in 2019, sorry, not 19, last year, 2023, I was diagnosed with breast cancer as well.
Okay.
So I had a mastectomy. Luckily, it was caught early on. So that also has changed my perspective quite a bit. Male breast cancer is quite rare, but they didn't find it in Dubai. I went to all the doctors here; they couldn't figure out what was wrong. I had a discharge from my left nipple.
Oh, wow!
And so for men, that's unusual.
Yes.
Also lucky, because if I didn't have that, it wouldn't have been discovered.
Known, yeah.
Usually in men, it's progressed all the way through the body before they discover it, and then they don't know where it actually originated. So the data's kind of obscured. Mm. And of course, men don't do mammograms and all that kind of stuff, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So anyway, they discovered it in London. Over here, no one could figure it out. I guess because hardly anybody goes in with it over here. But in London, the consultant said 3 or 4 men a month come in with such symptoms. So it's not unusual, but it's unusual, but it's still prevalent. And she understood. So it was good. I got the right diagnosis. It was early. I didn't need to have chemo and radio, but I'm on long-term medication. But that also changed my perspective a little bit on work-life balance and trying to make sure that I certainly put time aside for myself and mindfulness and all that kind of stuff.
So what are the 3 things that you shifted once you went through something like that? So
I was meditating anyway. I mean, I've been meditating. I was an early adopter of Headspace, the app. I was one of the first people to subscribe. So I've been using Headspace for almost, 9-10 years. I can't remember. But I increased my meditation significantly. I do almost 30, 40 minutes a day. Sometimes with the app, sometimes without the app. I walk almost 40 minutes every morning. Sometimes I run. I walk on the beach, and then I come back and I do my yoga, meditate, and then I go into work.
So you have taken on a holistic way of living now.
Yeah, and so I feel I'm quite well balanced. I tend to apply a lot of the meditation rules to work now. To see things from a distance, try not to react immediately, sit with it. It's not easy because nothing's always that straightforward if you're that kind of person. But I try and do that. I try and really look at things from a distance, try and see them go past. And then till it doesn't distill through, I try not to respond.
Not to react and not to respond.
Yeah, I mean, you get a sort of a provocative email, or you get something from a customer, or instinct initially would always be to respond. Now I try not to. I'll just sit on it and go back in 2 days, 3 days, a week. Yeah. But it's not easy. It's a difficult thing to master. Other than that, I've been traveling a bit more. I write short stories in my free time, although my free time is not that much, but I try. Yeah.
So you did a course in
yeah,
Oxford.
it was a creative it was actually called life writing, and a life writing course, which essentially is writing about your life, and potentially an autobiography. How to write about your life, which is very interesting because it really it sort of digs deep into your own life.
So it must be really therapeutic.
Yeah, it was very good. Digs deep into your own life, and then allows you to, through a number of exercises with a very good creative writing professor, to then develop your life in a format that's a written format, with examples and case studies. So yeah, it was fantastic. But that was a while ago, and I've done a couple of other ones.
So do you intend to write a book on your
Well, not really.
journey?
No, I mean, I've
No?
never thought about being. No, I just enjoy fiction. So, so I was thinking of using this as a way to sort of improve my fiction.
That's amazing. And how does it help you writing, creative writing?
I mean, the one thing about writing is that it allows you to become or feel more empathetic, because you've got to get into your characters' lives. So, I recommend people to read and read and read, because reading is one of the few ways to break down barriers and create empathy, or develop a sense of empathy for other people, for other lives.
I agree.
For the way other people live. And writing is very similar. You've got to really get to know your characters. You've got to live with them, sleep with them, go out with them, and really understand their intentions, their motivations, what drives them. So I think writing, for me at least, is a really is like a really deep way to get to understand the world better.
So when I wrote my first book, Come Alive, Don't Just Exist, it was transformational, because what I did is I penned down all the learnings I had, and I had to go back and see what were the challenges faced to me, and how did I come out of it, and how did I actually become the person I am today. And that was transformational, because you go through everything, and you go through, I basically write in my book the 5-phase process of self-love, because usually people tell you to love yourself, connect with yourself, meditate, and a lot of other things, but they don't tell you how to do it. So I had to actually go back into my journey and understand that how did I learn to love myself. And it was transformational. So writing, that's what it did with me, because it's a personal journey. So it really helped me to understand how did I do it with myself, and how can I help others with this.
So I mean, sort of transferring what you just said to fiction, a lot of yourself goes into some characters. So actually, it also helps you understand yourself in addition to the world, where characters' traits quite often come from things that you learn and see, not just in yourself but in the people around you. So certainly even in fiction writing, there is this feeling and that you're learning more and more about yourself with every word you write. So yeah.
Nice. So what's next for you and for Jones the Grocer?
We just continue to grow as we are, in a kind of slow, structured way. The intention is to eventually get to 100 stores. We set that target pre-COVID, but we kind of got waylaid by COVID. We had significant challenges during COVID. A lot of our stores were closed. We didn't get really the level of breaks that European governments necessarily gave F&B in Europe or wherever it is. So it was tough. So we were kind of set back, but we're coming back now. Maybe we'll hit that target in the next 4 to 5 years. We will hit that target, I should say, in a sort of optimistic way. And hope to get there, and then after that we'll see what happens. But at the moment, that's the sort of medium-term target, is to get to...
So you want to get to that in between franchising and operating your own stores?
No, currently our target, predominantly we're opening franchise stores.
Okay.
Our investment has, and we made this strategy well before COVID, where particularly since the challenges we had with with all the litigation and everything, that we would really significantly invest and upskill our head office So bulk of our investment has gone into IT, into training skills, into learning apps, into recipe development, into food, into food development, into managing relationships with partners, and really trying to keep our system consistent.
So building the foundation and
Building
making
the
that
foundation.
strong so you can
Yes,
go ahead and
exactly. So
do
we
the
really want to
franchising.
be able to support much better than I believe than many other franchisors our franchisee relationships, and that's where we are. So we are opening company-owned stores. Don't get me wrong, but the bulk of our growth is through a very structured, very well organized franchise strategy. Yeah.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
In advance for this beautiful number. And what's the one thing you would like to probably say to someone who has recently joined or wants to be in F&B?
So if you look around Dubai now, a lot of the restaurants, in my opinion at least, are all investor driven. And when you look at investor driven restaurants, they tend to become, plain vanilla. A lot of them, they look similar. They have similar menus. They all might have a DJ. They all have massive venues, massive sites, menus. Lentil salad. I don't know. Burrata. I don't know. I mean, it's the tuna carpaccio, yellowtail sashimi. They all of these sort of restaurants somehow merge into one if you think about their menus. And this is predominantly because of investor-driven interest in restaurants. And it's the right thing to do from one perspective. Investors can come in, they look into a market, they look at what everybody else is doing, they see who's successful, they look at those menus, they put them onto a spreadsheet, they put all the dishes from all these places together, they say, okay, this is good, this is good, this is good, and then the menu arrives. And the chef at the very end may have some opportunity to add a couple of different dishes or signature dishes, but you'll always end up with the usual suspects if something is investor driven. So advice, from, at least in this market, in the UAE, I think is to really come in with a view sort of that is not, in my view, yes, it's good to know numbers, good to understand what's successful, what isn't successful, but look at it more from being passionate about food. Like, what do you want to bring that's different to the menu? What reflects your taste for food that's different? Where you can really carve a niche for yourself. I also think small venues, and the other challenge in the UAE is that investors think F&B to be like a cash cow. I'm talking about landlords in particular. So the rents go up. You have alcohol license, rents go up.
Yeah.
Rents go up like 30%.
Yes.
So my opinion, and of course the venues are also very big. My opinion, a small venue serving really good homemade, let's say Italian food, if you can think of, that doesn't just do burrata, I don't know, pasta with tomato sauce, but something original, different, perhaps licensed in a small location, driven by a chef who's not charging the earth. Those kind of places I think would do really well, because we will find them and we'll go to them.
Absolutely.
I personally am tired of going to restaurants where I end up paying, 500-600 dirhams a head for what feels like something I ate in another restaurant just up the road.
So be unique and love what you do, kind of.
Yeah, I think so, and I think if you do that, you'd be successful, because the market, in my opinion, is just full of the same sort of things, at least here.
Thank you. Thank you again for sharing everything so authentically.
Yeah.
Wishing you the best in your journey forward, and thank you for your time today on this YPO series.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for watching this episode of the Come Alive podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell on whichever platform you're hearing it. Would love to hear your thoughts and comments. And until next time, see you soon.